Anytime Fortnite is having a low point and the content is down, there is always something that stays consistent and keeps the viewers watching. That thing is competitive Fortnite. Competitive Fortnite is a crucial piece of the success and why Fortnite has been so revolutionary, but it has changed so much since the original release of Fortnite. Not only has the skill level gone from this to this, but overall structure and crazy moments and even cheaters have shaped the history of competitive Fortnite. Today, I will be breaking down the history of competitive Fortnite. Before I begin, go down to the comments and let me know who your favorite competitive player is or has been. Also, make sure to like the video to show me if you want more like this, and allow me to keep making content for you. Now, let's go back to September 26, 2017, the release of Battle Royale. When Epic Games released the Battle Royale version of Fortnite, there was a beginning to the boom of the Battle Royale game mode. PUBG was as prevalent as ever, and just a month before Fortnite Battle Royale released, they hosted their first professional tournament. Although H1Z1 has been doing Battle Royale tournaments since early 2015, so it definitely was nothing new to the scene. With Fortnite quickly gaining popularity, it was almost immediately evident that competitive Fortnite was going to be a needed addition. This story starts in the preseason of Fortnite, better known as Season 0. During this time, there were no tournaments or even professional players, especially because the game was so new. To be considered a pro, you had to win a ton of matches and drop high-elim games. The game was incredibly clunky, and the building was far from polished, making it extremely difficult for players to take the game seriously and improve to the extent that they do today. As the first 43 days of Fortnite ended, so did Season 0, and Season 1 finally began. At this point in the game, a lot of established streamers were taking a chance and quitting their game and going all in on Fortnite. Unfortunately for them, there was no first shot accuracy, so aiming was more reliant on RNG than skill, and hackers were extremely prevalent with their ability to build 100 builds per second. But Epic Games stood out because of their great communication. If there was a problem with the game, they would, and still do, tweet within the hour that they are working on a fix to the problem. On top of all these things, Season 1 also offered the first competitive event, a hidden secret in Fortnite competitive history that less than 100 people will remember today. The event I'm talking about, 2017 DreamHack Winter Fortnite Tourney. This came with a prize pool of $10,000 and was strictly played in solos. During this time, they also had duo swag battles, where you could win hats or shirts. 55 players queued up for DreamHack, but unfortunately for 54 of the players, one of them was considered to be the best player at the time. His name was Etnix. Etnix was first place at the Global Wins leaderboard during the early days of the game, beating out people like Ninja, Myth, and Svenos. He took home the win on both days and with a very sizable margin. Unfortunately, no real top talent came from this first competitive tournament. During Season 2 is where the competitive scene really started taking off. On December 27th of 2017, just 13 days after the start of the season, Donald Mustard, the CCO of Epic, said that if Fortnite would go on to become an esport, Epic would support it. During this time, the French were progressing much faster than the rest of the world and even hosted a LAN event that a few very successful pros would have made their debut. Season 3 was when Fortnite really hit the mainstream. Like, really hit the mainstream. Fun fact, this was actually when I started playing because it came out on mobile. Between Ninja playing with Drake, Mongrel being on BBC News, and massive orgs like FaZe Clan starting to sign players, the competitive future of the game was looking good. During this season that really kickstarted competitive Fortnite was Ninja Las Vegas. Ninja Las Vegas was a LAN event with a prize pool of $50,000. Anyone who won a game earned $2,500, and anyone who eliminated Ninja in any given game also earned $2,500. Back in 2018, being able to earn this amount of money from Fortnite was an insanely unbelievable opportunity, while also helping get your name out there. Epic Games was finally starting to notice the appeal for the competitive side of the game. This was mainly due to the community tournaments that were being hosted. On May 21st, 2018, they decided to go big. They were prepared to give out $100 million for esports in 2018 and by the end of 2019. The motivation for competitive was now at an all-time high, and many people began looking for duos to grind the tournaments with and make themselves known. The way people could prove themselves at this point was mainly through the Solo Showdown LTM. It was essentially solo pubs, just with a scoring format and a leaderboard. The first 50 games played would count towards your overall score, but it was all placement based. The winner of the first tournament was none other than the OCE player Ruthless. Also during this season was the first Friday Fortnite, a massively popular kill race tournament hosted by the controversial Keemstar. Many names attended this that you wouldn't necessarily expect, like Mr. Beast, RiceGum, and Rotoshock. Other than this, any Epic hosted events were still stuck on hold. While these were not hosted by Epic Games, the first Fortnite Celebrity Pro-Am was. It was an event that ran around FNCS with content creators and celebrities playing LAN Fortnite in the blazing heat, most famously with Ninja and Marshmallow taking home the win. Season 5 was when the Fortnite Summer Skirmish series originally began. This was an 8-week event that streamers and top performers from the showdowns competed for hundreds of thousands of dollars every week. The only problem was that if you weren't a large content creator or hadn't performed well during the showdown, there was no chance you would get an invite. 72 Hours was the first player to win a professional tournament with an insane endgame clutch and took home the first earnings for Team Liquid. Season 6 is where the opportunities for aspiring players became even bigger. The first infamous Winter Royale tournament was hosted toward the end of the season, and smaller test cups like the Alpha Tournament, Beta Tournament, and the Tomato Temple Cup as the first in-game events. Many people won't remember that Epic actually said that the Fortnite World Cup qualifiers will begin the fall of 2018, something that ended up not being true. They would be postponed until spring of 2019. This didn't stop the competitive drive though. The Fortnite Fall Skirmish series also took place during this season. During the 6-week event, Tfue and Mitro were by far the best players in the world. Tfue winning the 2nd, 4th, and 6th weeks in NA, bringing home $330,000, and Mitro winning back-to-back in weeks 2 and 3. These skirmishes were invite-only and made it very hard, if not impossible, for the aspiring competitive players to get a chance to prove themselves. But they finally got their chance when Epic dropped an in-game tournament, Winter Royale. The Winter Royale was very high pressure for the players who had been grinding to get better, but haven't been able to compete at the main stage tournaments. The standings after the Winter Royale were pretty much as expected. Players like Bizzle, Zate, and Vivid performed the best in NA, while in EU, Mitro, Thomas HD, and Izza making noise in the quals. If you were one of the 100 that qualified, you would make a minimum of $1,500 regardless of the placement in the finals. This was a huge deal in the early days in competitive. After the event with hundreds of thousands of viewers, the motivation of young competitors continued to grow. Just 6 days into Season 7 was the grand finals for the Winter Royale. Most notably was the Psalm clip with the Infinity Blade. Not only was the Infinity Blade shaking up the competitive scene, but so was the boombox and planes. Season 7 was placed at the beginning of 2019, or also known as the best year of competitive throughout Fortnite's 6-year history. January hosted one of the weirdest tournaments ever hosted, the Architect Pop-Up Cup. In this cup, you could edit enemies' builds. However, Epic quickly moved on from this concept and released other tournaments like the Share the Love series and the Trios One Day Cup just weeks later. Also released was the Secret Skirmish. This was an offline tournament where top players were invited to compete for $500,000 at an undisclosed testing facility. Weird, right? Season 8 was the season that changed everything. Epic Games announced the Fortnite World Cup, lowered the age requirement, and orgs were pouring $100,000 into talent going into the qualifiers. Going into April, players got a real feel of the World Cup with the World Cup Warm-Up Cup. Notable placements were Mr. Savage and Benji Fishy winning in EU, and TL Fiber and Neferix winning in NA. That weekend, the solo qualifier for the World Cup began. To qualify for weekly finals, you had to be in the top 3,000 players in 10 games. If you were one of the 3,000, you would play in the Sunday finals. Earnings were given to all players who placed in the top 2,000, but in EU, top 8 got a ticket to New York, and top 6 in NA. 4 weeks went by during Season 8, and the remaining 6 weeks played in Season 9. Some standout names that qualified in Season 8 were Benji and Booga in Week 1, Mongrel and Mr. Savage in Week 2, and Tfue in Week 3. During Season 9, the competitiveness was extremely high because players' hopes of qualifying for the World Cup remained on the last 6 weeks. Fortnite also hosted one Trios Cash Cup with an insane prize pool in addition to these major tournaments. Epic was giving out the opportunities to anyone to make a decent amount of money. Only 1 week after the last week of qualifiers, it was time for the players to compete for the $30 million that was eligible in the solo and duos final. As you might know, it ended with Booga winning in solos and Nyrox and Aqua in duos.
Champion Booga!
With Season X came a new and exciting tournament, the Fortnite Champions Series. FNCS was the only tournament that was prominent during Season X. Epic also added the first solo cash cups. Back then, the top 50 players went home with earnings. But back then, that was extremely conservative. I know, right? Just imagine that. But of course, when talking about Season X, you have to mention the incredible trio of Mongrel, Mitro, and Benji, or MMB for short. They were so dominant that the chance of them winning an event was higher than not. In Season X, there were 5 weeks of quals, the most there have ever been, and MMB ended up winning 3 of the weekly finals and getting second in the 2 others. This season, disregarding all the problems with it, was a perfect way to end the competitive chapter. It ended up being really good for content, viewers, and players who wanted to get into competitive Fortnite. But if we're talking fun, Chapter 2 Season 1 was a legendary season. We had the free Christmas money tournament where Epic gave out $21 million just over 3 days. This season also introduced floppers, which ended up becoming the meta throughout the season, and are consistently a staple in Fortnite competitive future. This season began the year 2020 for Fortnite competitive, a year that became massively popular due to a certain virus. Fortnite tested squads as a competitive game mode, an attempt that was poorly received. This, alongside the grenade strat, gave Season 1 a little bit of a poor taste. Now Season 2, on the other hand, was extremely beloved. First some. This was the season that controllers were so overpowered that even some pros switched inputs. But I talked about this in my history of broken guns, so go give that a watch. Also during this season, the global lockdown started, so many people had extra time on their hands to grind and try out tournaments. On top of cash cups, they also had an addition with daily duo cups that ran throughout the majority of the season. This was a great initiative by Epic, especially since people were stuck inside. Season 2 also hosted the first duo FNCS, which was extremely fun to play, especially since the last duos event, other than the Winter Royale, was all the way back in the World Cup days. This also had one of the biggest scandals when Quib, one of the biggest streamers and pro players in OCE, got banned for cheating just weeks after winning duo FNCS. He went on to say he didn't, but unfortunately for him, the evidence was convincing. Speaking of cheating, there was actually another FNCS hosted during Season 2, the solo FNCS. This had many pre-planned surge routes and unfair play across the board. Although Season 2 FNCS solos ended poorly, Epic decided to still host FNCS solos again in Season 3. The same thing happened all over again. Season 3 also hosted the first DreamHack online solo tournament that attracted a ton of viewers. But overall, Season 3 was phenomenal for players trying to prove themselves individually, but could not compare to Season 4. Season 4, or Stark Season, was the best season ever for competitive Fortnite. A ton of movement was added into the game, and arena mode was moving faster than ever, giving more fights and making it even more fun and beneficial for growing players. Not only was it a trio FNCS season, but they also had the trio and solo cash cups. But the competitive scene took a turn, and this would affect the rest of Fortnite competitive. Up until this point, having good mechanics and aim was all that it took to qual for FNCS, but now it took all that and being really smart. We're talking loot paths, farm path, surge paths, etc. Moving into Season 5, Chapix did that, but better than anyone else, while he was also better at being a proper IGL than anyone else. Having roles in Trio FNCS was absolutely crucial to compete at the highest level. This season was also the season that took us into 2021 of competitive Fortnite. Unfortunately, this was the craziest year we've ever had, even when it comes to open opportunities. But for professional players, 2021 will turn out to be a fantastic year. Season 2 is where the gray area for top professional players started. Not only that, but Epic promised another trio FNCS as well as the third solo FNCS. This was the FNCS All-Stars. The All-Stars went on to be a huge hit for viewers, especially in EU, where Vino and Tayson remained so close, it came down to the final game and the final 1v1. Alongside this, there was another trio as I already mentioned. The standout trio was Queasy's trio, with Trulex and Jerky over in EU, and Mero's trio looking for back-to-back in NA. And Season 7 and 8 were mainly the same events, and the focus was all in on FNCS. But Epic was not putting nearly as much effort into the competitive side of the game. Cash Cups and Creator Cups here and there were the new standard. Now, FNCS Season 8 was kind of a wash. I can't say I remember it for myself, but if there was one thing to remember, the new team-up of Muzz, Mero, and Booga. This god squad of a trio took it all home, but this was just a start. More of that later. The biggest event of Chapter 2 did happen in Season 8 though, that being Grand Royale. With a prize pool of over $2.2 million, this tournament was a chance for teams to really prove themselves. The trio that took it home in EU was Hen, Tayson, and Chavix, further solidifying Tayson as one of the best to compete. But over in A was a different story. Remember the team that won Grands I just talked about last season? Well, Booga and Mero dropped Muzz, a crazy switch after just winning, and then went ahead to pick up Duke. This squad went on to win it all over in NA East, back-to-back Grand Champs for Mero and Booga. In the end, the next thing interesting wouldn't happen until Chapter 3. Chapter 3 started off with a bang, a brand new map, and FNCS was back to duos. Not much happened during this competitive season. I would have said if Booga and Mero didn't go get it done. The three-peat was finished when Booga and Mero went ahead and won it all by 50 points over Spade and Chimp. No, I'm not Booga's biggest fan, but I wanted to make sure you know he's the GOAT and the first three-peat. Most videos kind of skip over this. Season 2, I wouldn't say anything too of note happened except Peterbot and Byla winning, just showing you that you can win just being an insanely good fighter. The second to last season of Chapter 3 was all in preparation for what was to come in the last season of Chapter, the 2022 Invitational. The 2022 Invitational was the first LAN event since the World Cup itself, and many people considered it to be the World Cup just under another name. For the final season of Chapter 3, the stakes were incredibly high. The FNCS Invitation was teams from all around the world fighting for an opportunity to prove they were something special. To no surprise, the players that stood out way higher than anyone else was Seti and Cammy, and Queasy and Veno. This tournament also showcased that even though the game has been out for many years, this game is constantly adapting and new strats will always be found. Chapter 4 was at the beginning of 2023, a season with interesting new items like the Hammer and Thunder Shotgun. Top players stayed pretty consistent from the season before. Also tested in this season was Divisional Cups. This was helpful to the established pros because they had consistency during early weeks of qualification, but hated by people trying to come up because they would have to fight through contender and challengers just to fight with the best of the best in their region. Also during this season was one of the most controversial changes Epic has ever made, removing Siphon from competitive Fortnite. Siphon in Fortnite is a mechanic that benefits players who earn eliminations. It is instrumental when you are low on health because an elimination nets either 50 shield or health to the aggressor. Pros were in an uproar when the removal, saying that this gotta be a joke, and calling the move a crazy change. Epic claimed it was because even though the 10% of competitive players played more because of it, the other 90% was playing less because it made the game too intense to enjoy. During Season 2, Epic stopped doing the Divisional Cups and moved back to Duo and Solo Victory Cash Cups. The Solo Victory Cash Cups were a great addition to spark interest among casual players. Everyone had an opportunity to make $100 every week. In FNCS of Season 2, Veno and Queasy would steal the show, winning 6 out of 12 games and taking home the trophy, topping off the dominant performance. The main priority was placing high enough for the 2023 Global Championship, another massive LAN event that was considered another World Cup. Again, during the Season 3, The pressure was skyrocketing because it was teams' last chance to qualify for the Global Championship. A lot of people already hated Season 3 for competitive play because of the many problems: overpowered slurps, the mammoth pistol, and the flapjack rifle having essentially infinite ammo. The vibe for Season 4 was all around the hype for the Global Championship. Players were very happy to be back on LAN in just over a year from the FNCS Invitational. The Global Championship was dominated by EU and NA players, as expected, but the interesting thing was a team from Asia snuck in and managed to place 5th. Seeing smaller regions do well was a super cool thing and spread motivation to other small regions. After the Global Championship finished up, we got one of the most fun seasons in the year. Season OG was not focused on competitive, rather bringing back nostalgia and fun for casuals like me. That leaves us with where we are today. Competitive Fortnite has come a very long way, giving tens of thousands of players an opportunity to play and make money, not like most other competitive games. Although the game isn't always the best in terms of balancing and fixing bugs, there is no denial that we are extremely lucky to have Epic Games make such an effort with the competitive side of Fortnite. That is the history of competitive Fortnite. Now I know I am going to get comments with stuff I missed, and trust me, I tried not to and find what other people have missed, but honestly, I didn't want to make a 3-hour video. But if you enjoyed, make sure to like, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.